I'm Dr. Connie. I'm your host of Mind Your Health podcast. I share my unique perspective both as a practitioner and a patient battling autoimmune condition for over 25 years because I had to figure things out on my own, and my education and my practical approach as a patient allows me to truly integrate it so that you can be whole and the burden of sick care is no longer your own burden to carry. And this is what we help you with in this podcast.
Hi, this is Dr. Connie. Today's episode is all about how our hormones affect weight loss. There's a lot of people that are thinking that they're hormonal imbalance. They all know something's going on within their body to affect their metabolism. And many people ask me that the hormonal imbalance is what's causing them to have trouble or feel stuck in the weight loss journey. And this is partly true, but there's so much to be said when we talk about hormones. So first, when you think about the hormones, the importance of hormones and how it affects your physiology is what prompted this episode, because it's a complicated topic that really interconnects and it influences every aspect, every layer of your being. And hormones in and of itself does not get imbalanced or out of whack. It's a lot to do with the emotions that you feel, but the emotions are subject to what you're thinking, and your thinking is influenced by your deep held beliefs, which often is subconscious in nature. So a lot of you guys are perpetuating this inflammatory cycle to create an imbalance within. I just want to bring a little bit more awareness and hypervigilance around your hormones so that you can understand better your thinking and your emotional processing, so that you can better control how your hormones affect your weight loss, so that you can eliminate the stuckness and stop blaming the hormones. Rather than blaming the hormones to explain why you can't lose the weight, I want you to start to think about, how can I then move forward to melt the pounds off by creating homeostasis, by doing the things to balance everything so that everything is sort of fluid. Because the ultimate goal isn't to say something's out of whack and so give me more hormones and to replace certain things so that we can kind of do patchwork and play this band-aid game, because then when you alter one hormone, then you're going to have to alter another. So it's like a cascade effect. So rather than putting in something exogenously, meaning it's coming from the outside in the form of medications or hormones, I want you guys to think about ways to regulate yourself. And that's why we talk a lot about the autonomic regulation, so that we can better manage our homeostasis from within. So with that being said, I want to talk about the 3 essential hormones that I want you guys to think about. First of all, there's the cortisol, there's the insulin, and there's the thyroid. And then another one that sort of can tamper with your weight gain and weight loss can be your sex hormones like progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. And then it can also affect your cosmetic things like hair loss, hair growth, and all the things, acne, and all the things, right? And so let's talk about the cortisol. Cortisol is really a lot to do with your adrenals. And I want you to understand that cortisol is produced by your stress hormones, right? It's one of those things where it's the fight or flight. It's almost like, even though you're not in danger, anything that might happen, you might be more prone to going in the sympathetic nervous system drive. Remember, going back to what sympathetic nervous system is to understand and go a layer up to say, autonomic nervous system encompasses all your autonomic function. It's the neck down. It's in this chest cavity where we've got the pancreas, we've got the kidneys, we've got the lungs, the liver, and then the ovaries, and then the digestive system. All these things we don't think about. Our body just does automatically. And our body has a way to automatically know when we're in danger or we're supposed to be resting and digesting. The problem is that in today's world, even though there's no saber-toothed tiger following us and we're not running for our lives, every ping on our phone, every time that we have to check our social media feed or our computer work, everything is biting for our attention to sort of trigger this influence on our sympathetic nervous system. It's almost that fight or flight. It's that stress hormone surges, cortisol rises, and then everything is an influx because the cortisol can affect the insulin. Insulin indirectly affects the thyroid. Thyroid then, through biofeedback mechanism through the pituitary gland, can influence your sex hormones. So everything sort of works together. So better methodology and the strategy should be to think about how can I better shift my thoughts to better manage my emotions or understand my emotions to allow them to process in my body so that it has a minimal effect to shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic with the snap of your fingers. That's the strategy we haven't learned yet. Every time we're on the go, all throughout the day, most of us unknowingly are hyper drive onto the sympathetic nervous system. So we're always hyper vigilant. We're always running for our lives. We don't even know that we're doing that. And most of you are living your lives, and that's become the norm, to be in a highly state of arousal and stress. And that's become so much the norm that when I ask my patients in functional medicine what stressors that they have, it's like their high level of stress has now become the baseline, so much so that they don't even know what it feels like to be in this state of rest and digest. They don't even know how to guard their peace and joy from within, because that's so far-fetched that all they feel is anxiety, fear, and nervousness, and they don't even know how to stop that. And when you go to the doctors, what do? They further malign and create imbalances within your nervous system as well as your hormones by giving you more medications that changes neurophysiology. Now, you're changing the neurochemistry, which then indirectly affects the cortisol, insulin, thyroid, and the sexual hormones. Now you're wreaking havoc, and it's becoming a chaotic, hot mess, and we don't know how to pull it back. Let me tell you a story. There was a yoga teacher that works for me, and she's barely 24, and she was telling me how at 14, because of migraine, she was placed on birth control. She's now 23, turning 24, and she's realized, oh my gosh, for the last decade I've been on the same level of birth control. Nobody ever checked the levels. But as she's in her 20s, surely from puberty to 20s, somebody should have checked it, but nobody has, and she's been taking the same birth control. She herself felt like she was getting dizzy spells. Something was not right. Her blood pressure is hypo, or it's low, too low, to kind of create this this dizzy spells. When your blood pressure is low, when you have when you get up quickly or something, you might feel like that fainting spell. And so we can't explain it, but it can be hormonal in nature. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly the root cause. But when I talk about the root cause, it does have many layers to the root cause. And unless we look deep within at the belief systems and subconscious nature and the beliefs that we hold, triggering the emotions on top of it to create this influx of endocrinological imbalance, that we can't really know what the root cause is. And so in the realm of functional medicine, many of the practitioners just look at the biochemical mix, and they look at the hormones, something that they can measure, without looking deeper at what is the basis for the imbalance. Because what I'm learning is that as long as you can change your perspective and then teach patients how to better manage their emotions, it's a matter of time before the endocrine system, the hormone system, that includes your cortisol, that includes your thyroid and insulin and your sexual hormones, they start to orchestrate themselves in synchronicity so that they create their own balance. And that's the best form of balance that you can create, because your body knows exactly what you need. And you have to sort of believe in this belief system that your body knows exactly how to create the perfect pharmacy to optimize the health and to create that balance without adding anything in or seeking outside help for, with anybody else. Because biochemical balancing through the hormones or supplements can only take us so far, right? It's the underlying things that created this imbalance we have to touch and fix so that we can better create this balance. And I promise you, once you create this balance, you start to have less cravings. The fat cells start to melt away, as well as you have a metabolic edge, meaning you have a revved up metabolic system to really increase that metabolic edge, to have more efficiency in the movement, to burn more calories through what you do without creating inflammation. And that's all done because you're now able to sort of sequester and control the sympathetic pathway into more of the parasympathetic at the snap of your fingers by changing your thoughts and then shifting your emotions from negative to positive. And it's something that takes a little bit of practice, but it's something that you can learn to do. So I hope this makes sense as we go deeper into some of the questions you guys have. So we all know that hormones play a significant role because, as we know, when we hit menopause and we become a little bit more estrogen dominant, testosterone decreases and progesterone decreases as well as we, go into menopause and beyond, we start to have more muscle loss and everything becomes more inflammatory because we start to have itises, right? Arthritic joints, and things are degenerative, and we start to think, oh, I'm of age, so I should move slower, and we start to blame the age and all those things. But did you know that sarcopenia is a thing? It's a muscle loss. And as we get older, if you can stay vigilant enough and know exactly how to build your muscle in a smart way with full alignment and posture awareness, to create less inflammation in your joints, you can actually build muscle without causing harm to your joints in a way where it produces more efficiency. The more muscle mass you can create, the better metabolic edge you'll have, because all around more muscle pumping means that has the hormonal input, and then everything sort of flows and we can detoxify. Our liver is happy, our kidneys are happy, our musculoskeletal system is happy, and our autonomic nervous system is balanced. All the hormones now starts to create this dance and rhythm, and it's orchestrating internally how to balance and bring everything back. That's the best way to create weight loss. And once you have that through this methodology where you start to tap into the negative thoughts that you hold. So for example, if I told you that many of my patients come in who have weight gain due to menopause, and they blame the weight gain to say that I'm too stiff and I am too much in pain to move, I'm too old, I'm too this, those belief system is what creates sarcopenia, lack of movement, lack of inspiration and motivation, and they start to feel bad about themselves. And when you're in a lot of pain and inflammation, you don't want to move, and then you feel bad about yourself. When you feel bad about yourself, what do? We want to numb that bad feeling, right? So we start to eat more, and we grab for things to numb the emotions, so much so that we want more sweets. We want more fatty things like the cookies or the cake or alcohol or anything else that's bad for us, because we feel so bad that we just want something good or shift into something good by utilizing the things. And it's almost like a self-sabotaging action, and that's almost always driven by that sympathetic nervous system. So I want you to be mindful when you do. The key is to shift your mindset and thereby change your emotions and neutralize it. Or sometimes, as bad as you feel, allow for you to feel what you feel. And just sit with that negative feeling for a bit without acting on it impulsively, because a lot of us don't want to feel that, not even for a second, is why we grab that ice cream tub. We grab for that cookie, and before we know it, we've downed the whole tub of ice cream, whole box of cookies, and then we feel even worse after that, right? So we want to get ahead of our thinking, ahead of our emotions, to stop that dead in its tracks, to preserve our cortisol rush, the thyroid dysfunction, as well as the insulin surge that creates to increase the fat gain in the body. And that can all be stopped in this way. So I want you guys to really understand the connection between your belief system about what your body and the relationship you have with your body, and then the negative nature of your thoughts to create that negative feeling, to produce that negative action or behavior, to like stuff your face or go for that alcohol or crave that wine at the end of the day. So that becomes the norm. And the hardest thing in this cycle is to break that cycle and determine that this is not what you want. This is something to be stopped. And so I want you to trust me and say, the best form of weight loss is when you can balance from within and balance all the hormones by changing your thoughts and beliefs and then shifting your emotions, or feeling the negative emotions, allow them to process in your body. And then you can neutralize that emotion long enough without sabotaging your efforts for weight loss, so that you can stay in the game long enough. And that's the hardest thing for anybody, because your brain naturally wants to do what is familiar and what is second nature. The easiest thing to do is to succumb to what you've always done, right? So as I'm telling you this, I want you to trust me. And if you're really serious in 2024 to really make drastic changes, trust me when I say the identity that you hold, the beliefs you hold about yourself. If you always tell yourself, I'm big boned, I was born fat, I'm never gonna be skinny, and I'm never gonna be like her, and you're constantly comparing, judging yourself, hating on yourself without even knowing that you're doing that, that's the problem that we need to hone in on. Be really hyper vigilant and focus your problem there in your thinking that's creating this negative feeling that you're avoiding over and over again. And then without even paying attention to the thoughts and emotions, a lot of us in 2024, they make resolutions to say, I'm gonna lose weight. But first, without working on the behavior itself, we need to change what's going on the inside. Because something that I will tell you, in the 25 years that I've been doing this, I've studied psychology, I've studied nutrition, I've studied physical therapy, and I've been in clinical practice, I've studied functional medicine and yoga. What I can tell you is that 80% of the results that you produce in your life is not about something that you do. It's the energy by which you're doing it. It's the work that you do on the inside. So a lot of people don't do that work because we're always following and seeing, and we're feeling bad about ourselves. So we want to do what she's doing. We want to do what that person's doing. We want to do what that doctor says to do. And it's almost like we're influenced by everybody else. We stopped really owning our own bodies and taking our power back to say, this is me, and this is what I want, and this is the belief about me, and I choose to have a better relationship with my body no matter how it looks like today. I have a vision of where I want to go, and really hold that vision within me, and then shape my thinking long enough to create the feelings, or really feel the feelings around my thoughts about myself. Learn to be aware of those things, because we cannot change what we don't know, what we're unaware of. And so this idea seems so complicated maybe for those of you who are listening, but let me tell you, if you do not work on this very identity, it's almost like you have to change the hardware of how your operating system runs, because unless you change the hardware, the root cause, and pull out the old with the new, that nothing you do will be able to progress further beyond the limits of your belief system. So if you're still operating under the guise of all the conditioning you received up to this age, and up to this age you're having issues with weight gain, eating too much, not being able to be disciplined, and doing all the things that you don't want to be doing, but you can't help yourself sometimes, and then yet another resolution fails, I want you to know that this is the reason why. Is because you haven't changed the operating system that runs your computer system. And it doesn't matter what software, because if it's not compatible and your hardware does not sync with your new software that you're trying to input, it's never going to stick. So really, you have to change who you are becoming, hold a better vision of who you want to become. And so if your goal is to lose 20 pounds, you have to really envision what that means for you. How light do you feel? What kind of clothes are you wearing? And you have to hold the image of you doing things 20 pounds lighter, and you have to believe that you can get there. And the work now becomes you creating that version of yourself. That means you have to be the person that is capable of becoming 20 pounds lighter right now. Even though you're 20 pounds heavier, you just stick and focus on what you want to create. So much so that vision of yourself is so much stronger that that focus does not waver by anybody else or anything that's happening. You know that consistency will get you there, and that discipline of you holding that vision is what's going to get you there. Because the truth is, the moment you get onto a weight loss regimen, there's going to be a lot of sabotaging things that come up, and then your belief system is going to say, that's why I can never lose weight. And then you're going to go back to really confirming all your validations as to why exactly you cannot lose the weight. And then you're going to go back to feeling bad about yourself, and your relationship with yourself hasn't changed anything. And 2025 comes around, you might yet set another resolution without working on the self. And then you're going to go on year after year doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results when you haven't changed who you're being. So I just really want you to sit and think about this, because this is the key thing that is preventing you from reaching your goals. It's not your hormones. It's not anything to do with that. Your hormones are directly influenced by your thoughts and the feelings that you feel, and then the actions that you take, whether positive or negative, that influences and cascades and has that ripple effect down to your hormones. All hormones in the body, that affects that biochemistry. And at that point, it doesn't matter what supplement you take or what bioidentical hormones you take, what functional medical doctor, and you pour out so much money into changing your diet or getting on this regimen, because once you become a robot to something else, somebody else has in mind for you, and you follow the steps by doing without changing the way you're being, you're always going to repeat the same process, and ultimately you're going to go back, shifting back to where you were, back to square one, and then you're just always going to repeat the cycle. And that's why so many people are doing yo-yo dieting. Another question that comes up a lot is, can I, when my hormones are unbalanced, lose the weight? Well, you've got a lot of things working against you, because, again, hormones directly affect your metabolism through cortisol, thyroid, as well as insulin, as well as the sexual hormones, because four of which affects your metabolic edge. Metabolism is your ability to burn your calories effectively and efficiently. Everything that you consume should be enough to expend as energy, not to be stored as fat. Right? You want to keep moving, and you want to produce this effectiveness and efficiency in this energy without creating further inflammation from within. That starts with movement, healthy dieting, healthy thinking, healthy feeling, as well as healthy being. These are the components of a healthy life. And that includes really looking at all the relationships that you have, but more important than anything else is your relationship with yourself. So birth control, if you're on birth control, really rethink why you're on birth control. It's a good idea to be off of it. I know some people are on birth control or hormone replacements or birth control because they don't want the periods, or they don't want the migraines, or they don't want to get pregnant, or what have you. But I think it's a good idea sometimes to be completely free, allow your body to do what it does best, to normalize and establish homeostasis on its own, so that you can learn, or body can learn, without any help, without birth control or exogenous things coming into the body. Better let it regulate itself. Allow the pancreas increase insulin. Allow the cells at the receptor sites to be sensitive to the insulin, especially when you're eating, so that, and then what you can do is to also reduce the stressors in your body, like because the stress, even if it creates a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of fear, anything can be stressful, right? Even when somebody says something negative to you, it can be stressful. When you take everything personally at work or socially, that can be all negative and it can be very stressful. That affects your cortisol. That affects your sympathetic drive to be on the surge. And whenever you let that go into the surge, it's that fight or flight. I'm going to do or die. And then you don't have any logical, rational decision-making process in working for you to help you to gain control over that. So I really want you to hone in there. And many people ask, how can you lose weight if you have hormonal imbalance, right? It can be challenging, but it's not impossible. So always, you have to address the underlying issue. A lot of my patients want the quick pill to fix. Just balance out my hormones, give me more hormones of the other so that the other hormone can balance. So I just want you to know there's always a cost to when you take something exogenously, like taking the thyroid pill, taking the birth control pill, bioidentical hormones, taking the insulin if you have diabetes. These things can wreak havoc in your body systems. So it's best to naturally avoid any of this. And my motto is this, is minimize the exogenous factors first, if at all possible. Now, I'm not opposed to adding a little bit here, but strategically adding it in a way while you're working to optimize your health, doing your part to ultimately look to decrease or wean off the things that you've added when you feel better, right? Because you want to have a strategy in place when you're adding things in, even if it's the supplements, even if it's the bioidentical hormones, just a little bit. You want to be rechecking that and getting off of all the exogenous things that you're taking into your body. Rather than that, just work on balancing all at the same time so that you establish homeostasis, wean off the rest, and trust that your body does what it does best, is to balance itself. So hormones can affect your weight loss because they're highly effective messengers in the body to tell your pancreas or your cells, the receptors, your brains. It's a very subtle chemical messengers that tell your organs what to do, to optimize, to slow down, to increase inflammation, telling your immune system to do what. So there's a lot at play. There's a constant movement within the body. How you help that is through the actions of learning to regulate your own nervous system. So when you know you're kind of revving up into fear and anxiety, first thing is being aware of what's happening in the body. And then when you do have this fear and anxiety come up, first sit with it, allow the fear and anxiety to come up without panicking. And then when your heart is palpitating, you don't know what to do, and you see that your brain is spinning out of control, you start to observe what thoughts are holding on. And then quickly grab a notebook, start to write down everything that's happening in your brain, to write down exactly what you're thinking, to create this unnecessary spin-off in your head, to create this big drama into the worst case scenario. Because that's what takes us from like, okay, to anxiety attack and panic attacks. And at that point, when we reach that point, all logic is thrown out the door. We can't engineer anything. We can't be strategic. So I want you to get ahead of that. But when you are able to write it down, it's almost like a detox for your brain when you actually see it in action. So take that as a form of meditation, you getting connected with what you're feeling. And then when you see it on paper, you're like, oh my gosh, you bring consciousness back. You bring awareness from the outside in to understand better where it's coming from without judgment. And you just look at where it's at so that you can better manage what's happening, okay? Now, a lot of things happen with menopause. There's, number one, a lot of women think, okay, with menopause, there's a lot of implications. It means we're getting older, we're gonna get saggy skin, there's a lot of fear around it, we're gonna get loose, we're gonna get fatter, we're gonna get, spare tire in the middle. A lot of women have a lot of issues with menopause. The fat cells themselves have what's called xenoestrogens. It's like estrogenic looking like compounds stored in the fat cells, acting like estrogen, right? And that's been accumulated in the fat cells. And as we go through menopause and we go through the ups and downs, it just accumulates, fat cells get bigger. And so as we get fatter, what do? We start to feel bad about ourselves. We get into depression. We don't want to move when we don't feel good. We don't want to get dressed. We don't want to take the effort to, fix ourselves and really take care of ourselves because everything feels very blah, right? And so this is a pattern a lot of women fall into. So I just want you to stay hyper vigilant, really move despite how you feel. Little by little, with consistency and effort and focus, you can pull yourself out of it. The more muscle mass you can build through your menopausal age, you can see more definition around the middle, and then the fat cells shrink, metabolic edge comes back. But this is where you really have to stay focused to pull out just above the water, if you so to speak, and really think about the odds stacked up against you and use that as leverage to go a little bit above and beyond. And if you work just a little bit more and stay consistent despite how you feel, and stay consistent little by little, your results will prove itself. It's just that it's hard for many people to stick to their plan, especially when it's not working in their favor, and they get discouraged. And again, it's their emotions and their thoughts that break them down. And what's helped me a lot is the coaching aspects of patients when they feel this way, getting one step ahead of what's to come and navigating the feelings around the weight gain and then the hormonal cycles that can be induced through the changes in life. These are things that if you can stay aware of them, you can really hone in and really fix this at the root cause. And root cause always is really being one step ahead of your belief systems, your identity of who you believe to be, and then how you hold yourself with the hormonal shifts and changes. And because a lot of the times people just feel like, oh my gosh, it's chaotic, it's overwhelming, I'm getting fatter and fatter, and then people go into this panic mode, and then they come to my office or other people and look to the Instagram and the influencers and then the other practitioners, or seek another help externally to them to say, help me to lose the weight. But remember this, nobody can lose the weight without your permission. You are at the center of all things. And unless you grasp and you own this body of yours, but more importantly, unless you love on this body, really own it in a way where you understand it. And understand it means you become hyper aware of your tendencies and the impact that your thoughts and your belief systems have on the emotions that you generate in the body to create the results through the behaviors that you take. That's how you really get ahead to balance the level up without exogenous factors and needing any help from the outside. For some of you, this episode may have been a little bit more intangible, but let me tell you, I used to be a practitioner that I wanted to give you a specific diet, specific pill, and I used to think calories in, calories out, and just really look at the body three-dimensionally. But really, we're four-dimensional, five-dimensional, six-dimensional beings. There's so many layers to regulating our nervous system that now I believe that you're in full control over your own nervous system. And your nervous system encompasses your enteric nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, your somatic nervous system, which is the movement piece, and then your empowered psychology, which is your thoughts and your mind and your emotions. And then unless we can master those things and understand how they all integrate together to optimize the whole, you'll always be shooting darts in the dark without knowing the impact that you're making. And year after year, you'll be repeating the same yo-yo cycle over and over again. So we do have a lot of programs available that target the root cause. And this is the work that we do here at Functional Yoga Medicine. This has been a very enlightening episode all about the hormones. There's so much to be said and unpacked about independent hormones, including the cortisol, insulin, as well as the thyroid and sexual hormones. They all have chakra centers that are correlated with each of the endocrine system, endocrine organs, along with the hormones that it produces to affect the balance energetically in the whole body. So if you gained anything out of this episode, I hope you gained that your body is more than what you do. It's more about how you're being, which encompasses how you're thinking and you're feeling and doing, and then becoming hyper aware of it so that you can be self-aware of these effects in your life. And then learning how to regulate your nervous system is key. And when I say nervous system, it's much more than just autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic and sympathetic. It's enteric nervous system, which is your gut, autonomic nervous system, somatic nervous system, and empowered psychology, all of it together. It's not as complex. It's something only you can do, is why we emphasize so much. And I've devoted this episode because there was so much confusion and a lot of questions around hormones and exogenous hormones, when in fact, you want to be relying on endogenous, meaning it's what your body naturally produces. Exogenous means what you're taking in from the doctor's prescription, whether it be supplements or bioidentical hormones. Those things only add to the inflammation. At best, I want you to utilize those strategically to get rid of the symptoms, knowing that you have to do the internal work to balance your own self, your own four nervous systems in a way to balance the endogenous, which means inside hormones within your control, by mastering your mind and body. And that, my friends, is at the root of everything that we do at Functional Yoga Medicine, and it's much easier than you think. So stay tuned, follow me for more. There's so much more than meets the eye here, and it's a lot more simpler than you think. So stay here. Let's really, really reach our goals in 2024.
Thank you for listening to the Mind Your Health podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, we would so much love it and appreciate it if you share it with someone who could benefit as well as to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else where podcasts are found. And leave us a review. We would be so grateful, and it helps us to reach more people just like you, so you can become more empowered to enjoy longevity and health. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Dr. Connie Chung. And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast for a new episode every single week.